I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. This is the weekend of September 14th and 15th. I just got back from the Commonwealth Pen Show. I was there just for maybe 3 hours on Saturday morning, and a lot of different things to do this weekend. But it is a fairly small show, and but I wanted to sort of come back and give you some of my impressions. As it turns out, the very first pen show I ever went to was the Commonwealth Pen Show some 2 years ago. And I think it's a great show to go to for a first show because it's pretty small and it's very friendly. I live in New Haven, so going to Boston is only a few hours away. It's actually in Somerville this year. It wasn't in a hotel. 2 years ago, it was in the Holiday Inn in Bunker Hill. This time, it was in the Somerville Armory, which was built in 1903 and now is an art center. And I thought that was a very interesting place to have it. It has a kind of disadvantage because when you have a pen show in a hotel, it's much easier to socialize after the show and to organize other kinds of events. This is a little more limited that way and more dispersed. But nevertheless, I was able to run into a lot of people. So a lot of people I knew were going to be there. My good friend Deniz Bagdas, that people who follow my channel should know because I've interviewed her. Her husband Yigit was there. They have a stationery business called DayArtStore. And they were there and looked very, very busy. Paul Erano, who is the editor of the Fountain Pen Journal, was there. He was very excited because the new issue is out. I was excited because I have my interview with Charles Debus and my discussion of the origins of the Tyrannus Schaefer pen that's in that issue.
Yeah. If you really are looking for a vintage pen magazine, something that's not like any other pen magazine on the market, try Fountain Pen Journal. We've got outstanding authors such as Jonathan Weinberg, David Isaacson, Josh Blacks, plus myself.
He's terrific.
We cover all aspects of the hobby, and I actually have half a bagel in my mouth right now. So Jonathan,
well, there you go. He's a mensch, so that's why he has a bagel in his mouth. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I strongly recommend that people subscribe and get that magazine. It comes out 4 times a year. He also sells pens. He had a huge sort of assortment of fountain pens out there, and he's just a great guy, very friendly to see him. I mean, everybody's so friendly. The very first vintage pen that I bought at a pen show was from John Corwin, who has a business restoring flexible vintage pens. He is just a wizard with these pens. He's a pen whisperer, and he gets them to write just so beautifully. Back then, 2 years ago, I bought a Waterman 72 from him, and it's still going strong. And it's a labor of love. He's really teaching people about flex pens when they come there and encouraging them to try them out. So that was terrific to see him. There were several nibsmiths, including the legendary Richard Bender, and Josh Lax was there fixing pens. It was not a show in which two kinds of pen people. Well, maybe they were buying things, but were not sort of on display. There were not, as far as I could see, very many pen makers, small makers, or even the sort of middle-sized makers. So at most pen shows, bigger pen shows, you run into Sean Design, for example, which they have very wonderful pens. You might see Jonathan Brooks selling some of his fantastic pens and just the whole array. And I've talked about those in review to other pen shows like the Baltimore Pen Show or the Washington DC show, which is just huge. Those shows tend to fill many ballrooms with literally hundreds of people selling their pens or displaying their pens. They also have big manufacturers like Pilot will come and represent their pens. In this case, there was Esterbrook, I think there was Narwhal. Narwhal was there. It was kind of exciting because they have a new retractable pen that you may have been seeing on the web, some of the reviews, early reviews of. I got a chance to try one of them. It's called the Eclipse, and I have to say it's quite unusual. It writes quite nicely. I was impressed by how well it writes, but I really didn't get enough time to, to see if I really liked it. But it was nice talking to the people, the representative from Narwhal, about their pens, which I think tend to be really nice and also are quite affordable. Who else was there? I saw that Jonathan Steinberg, the writer, he also sells pens. He was there. I'm trying to think of other people who I saw there. Oh, I saw Mad Mike, but he was actually buying pens. He wasn't there selling his pens as he usually is in the big pen shows. As I say, I was only there for a few hours. I got there around 10:30 in the morning. It opened at 10. There was a big long line. When I got there, almost within the first 5 minutes, there was a table from a vendor that I'd never heard before from Cape Ann, and they had some beautiful pens. And I immediately saw this pen, which is the Montblanc Boheme. This is a gold-plated version of this pen. I've always wanted one of these pens. They don't make them anymore. They have a special thing about them, gimmick, I guess, really, which is that they have this retractable nib. But what's strange, of course, it's a retractable nib, but it has a top also, which seems kind of redundant. But I've always thought that was cool. And then it has this sort of torpedo opening here where you put the cartridge. It's only a cartridge pen. Anyway, this is normally a very expensive pen. They had an unbelievable deal on it, and I used all my cash to get this pen right in the beginning, which in a way was good because then I didn't have any money to buy any other pens later. And that's always a cool thing to do. Well, I don't know if cool thing to do, but when you go to these fountain pen shows, particularly if there are a lot of vintage dealers, they prefer if you use cash to buy things. And also if you have a certain budget that you bring with you, that keeps you from overspending, although you can go to an ATM and get more money. So, but for me, that worked because otherwise I think if I had much more money in my wallet, or if I could have used credit cards, I would have bought several other pens. But I was very excited right from the beginning that I had gotten this great bargain. And it points to another issue about when to go to a fountain pen show. So a lot of people don't have time to go every day, right? So should you come early or should you go at the very end? In a lot of fountain pen shows, they have a special day, like on a Friday, where you may pay a little extra, and it's open really to to people who really are interested. And on Friday, you don't get as many people, so that's a good way to sort of see what's going on. But that wasn't the case here. So in this case, getting there early meant that I was able to get a really good deal on this particular pen. But some people would say, well, the best time to go is towards the end when people are getting ready to go, and often people want to make a really good deal on a pen. So if you want to bargain with somebody, you might be better off bargaining at the end. And obviously, if you can go both in the beginning and at the end, that's a good way to go at it too. Again, if you want to try to maximize the best deal that you're getting. But keep in mind also that most of the people who are involved in this, this is not necessarily their only means of making a living, and they're doing this for the love of the whole fountain pen culture And if it means, you might pay a little extra for a fountain pen, you're also getting the knowledge of the person. Often in the case of people like Paul, I am sure if you have any problem with your pen and you contact them, you could send it back, and they would be happy to take it back. In other words, people really want to make sure that you're happy, and also they want to recruit you for this incredible passion, and that's very true of John Corwin too. Same idea. He really wants to make sure that you're happy with what you bought, and if you have any problem, you contact him, and he'll make it good. So, it might be worth it to pay a little bit more and actually get to know somebody in their pens rather than buy it through a stranger or on eBay. So when you go to a pen show, it's not just about the buying and the selling, it's about becoming part of a kind of community. And that was very much in evidence here. Given the size of the pen show, given the whole atmosphere. I love the building, the old building, the sense of history there. The town of Somerville, which probably people who know New England is near Cambridge, is next to Cambridge. A lot of students from Tufts and Harvard and other universities live in Somerville. A lot of wonderful stores and restaurants. It was a beautiful day, and then of course you're right next to Harvard Square and to Boston, so it's a really fantastic location. That leads me to the other side of all this, which is a big question, which is why is it that New York and New England don't seem to have a big pen show like the DC Pen Show or the Philadelphia Pen Show or the Columbus Pen Show? You would think that the Boston area could support a huge pen show that would have, maybe in a different time, have all the different vendors that you get in Washington or Philadelphia. Well, I suppose the idea is that if you live in Boston, you can still get to those places. But I think the other problem is that it's so expensive to rent a hotel, to get a hotel, to host these kinds of events in the Boston area. And I think the same thing is definitely true in New York. And then even if you do have a big show in one of these places, it's very, very expensive for people to stay in the hotels in these locations. I just put out that there are two cities like Providence, Rhode Island, or New Haven, where I live, that I think would be ideal for a big pen show because they're on Amtrak. And if you live in New York and you live in Boston, you can take the train and you can drive, and the hotels aren't expensive. And there are times when it would be much more affordable to do a big pen show. I think Providence would be really ideal. But it's a huge amount of work, and there needs to be people who want to do this kind of thing. And I thank the people behind the Commonwealth Pen Show for making this effort. Last year, they weren't able to find a venue. So last year, they weren't able to do it. But this year, the Armory show, I think, did work out very well. And I ran into a few people who recognized me from YouTube, and it was their first pen show, and they were very excited and a bit intimidated. And the smallness of the pen show, I think, actually was a good thing for them. The Commonwealth Pen Show was really all about, I think, vintage pens and real people really committed to the culture and the history of fountain pens. There were a lot of people like Jonathan Steinberg, who's written marvelous books on the history of fountain pens. He was there, or Richard Bender, who is really the all-time guru of fountain pens. He was there. So it was a great opportunity to meet people. However, because it wasn't in a hotel, perhaps wasn't the easiest time for people to socialize afterwards. There was a coffee shop there, cafe, in the building. The building had all kinds of other things going on because it's an art center, and that's very nice. So that's sort of my view of the Commonwealth Pen Show. Again, thank you to the organizers. Thank you for doing it. It was only $10 to get in. I think it was an amazing bargain. And if you went both days, it was only $15. So that's another thing. It was so affordable. And also the fact that it is in Somerville, which is very accessible by public transportation, also is a great thing, because you can easily take a train to Boston and easily take the subway to Somerville. So all that is very good too about that location. All right, thank you. If this was useful for you, if you had comments, if you went to the show, let me know. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's the way to support the channel. Thanks.